Restart. I'm going to wait another 30 seconds before I get started. All right, well, let's get started. It's 2 after 2 on a cold and rainy day, snowy, and changing the rain here in the northeast of United States. So welcome everyone. I am back for a little bit. I want to say hello to everyone. It is good to be back. I've been gone for a while. It's almost 8 months, and I'm very glad to be back and presenting on another topic today. I hope all of you are well and have a great 2024 year, because my 2023 year was pretty rough. So I'm really hoping for a great year. So today's talk, the importance of resilience. I am focusing on resilience, on our adjustment through changing abilities today. And why am I doing that? Because I think it's a really important way to cope with chronic illnesses, chronic physical disabilities. So I am going to try to highlight some of the different facets of that. But before I go into the meat of our talk today, again, welcome to my webinar. I'd like to thank the foundation for the yearly support of my talk. They are Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation is a great support for everyone else, including myself. I go to the website constantly for trying to understand all the facets of these things that we're going to talk about. The foundation has a lot of information, I know, on all the different areas of especially the physical and psychological aspects of recovery and adjustment. I'd like to also thank Hannah and Emily for helping me coordinate today's webinars. They've been in touch with me for the last 8 months to try to get me back to today's talk. I really appreciate that, and as well as my new coordinator support, Kelly. So she is in the background right now with her sunglasses. Now, I did forget, I am supposed to, for some of the individuals who cannot see me, I need to give a visual what I look like. So I am a 50-some-year-old balding Asian guy. All right. A little hair, 50% maybe. Asian individual. I am wearing a nice brown, I think it's a nice brown sweater. I sit in a wheelchair, which you can't see in the video. But in my background, I have my bookshelves of all the books that I've collected over the years, and 2 chairs. And so that's where I'm sitting. I'm sitting in my office right now. So hopefully that, I was going to say I look like a Jackie Chan but I don't think that's a good description of me. So so thank you everyone for spending, and the listeners. I always believe that time is life, and when you give up your time for me, it's you're giving up your life. And so thank you for spending your life with me. So let's go into the heart of this. I also have my student / assistant with me. So you're going to see me look to my left once in a while and say, hey, Jacqueline, next slide. So we are going to talk about physical changes today. We're going to talk about psychological changes as you grow old with chronic disability or physical disability. We're going to focus down on resilience and how resilience help you manage your disability, your limitations, your handicap at times. Some of the areas of resilience and in general, we're going to talk about uh, workplace. I'm going to focus on children for one facet of our talk, and how we can build resilient children. I'm going to talk about women and some of the specific gender specific stress that they tend to be oppressed by at times. And we're going to also talk about a concept called post-traumatic growth, which is, can you be better by having such difficulties at times in your life? Does it make you a better person? I think most of you would agree with me that it does influence on who you are, for the better and for the worse at times. As a psychologist myself, I tend to see them when they are at the worst, unfortunately, in a sense of part of their life. But I am glad that they see me, of course, because then they're making an effort to move forward. So let's go to slide 2 here. We're gonna jump on to slide 2, and so right off the bat, look at all these different facets. Now, in general, I think even if you don't have a physical disability, you're gonna have all these facets that are gonna impact your daily life. Older people like myself, we slow down, right? We get smaller, our muscles get weaker, with most of us. Stiffness in our joints. With today's weather changes and rain, my joints hurt. I used to hear that when I was younger with older people, like, oh, it's gonna rain soon. And I was like, oh, man, that's weird to know that it's gonna rain just based on your body. And man, it's so true. Your joints feel like crap when it's raining. So look at the slide for a second. And today's webinar, where it's about interacting too. I loved if you interact, and I'm going to talk about some of the questions you already sent in. But if you have any specific questions, feel free to post them in our chat. But do you have a specific physical aspect of one of these bullets that we talk about today that tend to bother you the most? Is it pain? Is it your change in posture? As you sit in, especially if you use a wheelchair, over time, your body just starts becoming more and more compressed. Is it the loss of sensation? Neurologically, are you, getting less and less sensation over time? Or some of you might actually be getting more hypersensitive in different areas. So feel free to tell me that's my question for you. What area of physical change right now tends to be the hardest for you as you get older? And feel free to put that in the chat. I am curious. So fatigue. I don't see myself being having as much endurance in comparison to what I was back in the when I was 20. I mean, geez, spent 37 years since my injury, and it is a long time. Speaking of injury, 37 years, and this is a whole nother podcast on a different day. I was able to find the individual that actually saved me from drowning in the ocean a couple weeks ago. So that was a really unique thing to experience, because I never thought I would ever be able to find the person that actually saved me. So but that's a whole nother podcast. Love to talk about that whole process in another podcast. But for now, we are going to continue with our concept of, general physical changes, skin. your skin changes, your body changes. So those of us who grow older with the disability have a lot of physical deterioration. And it's not something that many of us get educated upon when we are in rehab. It's and I guess it goes both ways because a lot of people aren't in rehab very long anymore. So a lot of education goes along with just life in general. When you get out and you start noticing some of these things, you deteriorate. Okay. So those are some physical changes. We are, so next slide. So I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to talk about physical changes, but I am a clinical psychologist. And obviously this is the area of the slide that I am more interested in, which would be the changes in psychologically. Well, what happens as you grow and you live with chronic physical disability? How do you manage the daily stress? So are you adjusting as you become physically less and less? Are you counterbalancing that with more psychological strength? Are you emotionally more secure now than you are in the past? Do you manage the things that are difficult now better than you were 20, 30 years ago? I mean, a good example would be this is, so if you have a flat tire when you're 20 years old and you have to change it, would that disrupt you more than if you are 45 now or 50 or 60 and then you live through multiple tire changes now, so that it's not and so is your emotional well-being better? Are you isolated or do you have a partner? We know based on research that if you're have people around you, if you're married, you tend to do better than if you are alone. Okay. Being alone, lack of support is a big factor in how we survive. Now, for someone like myself, who is physically disabled, having someone is not only crucial in my life, but obviously it impacts my everyday life of being able to just have a life, get up, be functional, meet my physical activities of daily living. Throughout your life, have you experienced depression, anxiety? Um, you know, 20% of people have at least anxiety. 12% of the population have depression. 50% of individual will have at least one mental illness diagnosed in their lifetime. So half of you out there will have some aspect of that. So again, it's really important to understand, do you ever get to a point where you are chronically depressed or anxious, and how are you treating that? Another facet of a psychological adjustment is loss. As you get older, you're going to start losing people in your life. That is just part of nature. Your parents, your grandparents, your friends, due to just general old age, or is it just due to accidents or risky behavior? But either way, you are going to face loss no matter what. And that was hard when I lost my father. I didn't understand about death and the process of adjustment, and because I never personally had to deal with it. I truly believe that if you never experience it, it's really hard to understand the concepts until you experience it yourself. So coping with loss, that is part of a psychological that you must be able to figure out before to be healthier. Cognitive changes. I see as we get older, the memory's not as quick. You're not as sharp, and that is so true. That is so true. Older people, we do slow down. Our reactions physically and cognitively are, and maybe at times being non-reactive is good because we're a little more wiser, and sometimes we sit back and evaluate the situation a little better. Um, we're patient, but again, there are cognitive changes, and it first starts with memory. When I work with people in the elderly population of 65 and over, as you know, dementia, Alzheimer's, those are a big part of many, or some of the individuals who grow old. As you get closer to end of your life, many individuals focus on spirituality and meaning in life, and it's a review of what have I done in my existence. What is the meaning of life? Why do we exist? Do we just exist to work, or do we exist to be happy? Do we exist to be compassionate, or should we be more self-focused, and is this exist just for our own needs? Those questions come about. The next bullet, resilience and adaptation. Well, I'm going to talk a lot about resilience today, in hopes that you can take a little bit of what I say today and use it in your everyday life. Hopefully it can maybe reduce some of the social isolation, emotional aspect of depression and anxiety of today's life. Okay. And ultimately, what's your quality of life? In the bigger picture, do you get to enjoy your quality of life, and access to support service? During the pandemic, well, many of us individuals with disability had such a difficult time with caregivers and their ability to be hired, their ability to come because they were sick. So that was a big eye opener for many of us, realizing that you had to have a good support system around. I cannot survive without good people around me. I can without talk about my family. I talk about my assistant here, Jackie, my colleagues at work. It's crucial. I that's part of my resilience in coping with this disability. So, one of the things I didn't point out when I was talking about coping with loss is, I had a friend just a few years ago, who, for good and bad, had his mother take care of him most of his life. Well, all his life actually, but unfortunately, the fortunate part is that he never really had to worry about having someone there as a primary caregiver. And they dedicated their lives together, pretty much for 50 some years. But when she passed away, just based on age, he was lost. He really didn't know what to do with his life. I mean, he was a productive citizen, he worked and all these things, but he was lonely, he was isolated because he no longer had his mother, who was his primary caregiver. Unfortunately, due to that, as a big part of his life, he no longer is here. So I truly miss him, but yeah, it scares me a little bit to think of that. These things can happen just like that. So next slide. So resilience versus recovery. Now, resilience, I'm going to go to one more slide. I'm just going to show you something to me. If you go to the next slide. There. So resilience is about being stable. It's like a thermostat. I think of resilience as it, especially up here in the north, when it's cold, when it gets cold, the heater comes on. In the summer, when it gets hot, the air conditioning kicks in. So it's a way of giving this consistent. Now you do still get a big bump in the beginning when something happens. If you get sick, if something, if you lose someone, there's a bump, but quickly it evens out, and it just goes. You're stable over time based on, if you look at the bottom graph here. Bonanno in 2004. This is off of his charts. Whereas recovery, there's a huge bump, and then you come down. So resilience is a little bit different from recovery, in the sense of recovery that you expect to be distressed for a while, sometimes for a few months, sometimes for a few years, and then you come back to north. Whereas resilience, you get a little bump, and then you go back to being who you are, hopefully at a pretty good steady state. And that's the difference between recovery and resilience. And I like to focus on resilience because resilience is always about relationships. Okay. Fundamentally, without people, you can't be resilient. And without people in good settings that you interact with, there is no resilience, and there are extremely difficult to adjust to life. When you think of the short term of adjustment, you're just sort of managing the crisis at the time. A lot of times, if you're resilient, those crises don't seem that big. Now, initially, maybe, it may feel big, but you quickly reevaluate, and everything seems to go back to somewhat of a controllable perception. And that's big. You have to believe you have some control of the situation, even though you don't. So that's a big part of the difference between resilience and recovery. Next slide. So how does resilience play with happiness, life satisfaction? Does being resilient make you more happier? Okay. Does it? Do you feel so? If someone says, are you happy? Or that's very different than what your quality of life. What is your, how do you feel your life has some satisfaction or quality? Life satisfaction is sort of this big global feeling of what's the bigger picture. Yeah, I've been disabled for 37 years, and am I happy with my life? Yes, I am. Do I wish there was more that I could do? Absolutely. But am I a happy person? I believe I am. I try to be, because I think that's part of my nature, and people around me allow me to be optimistic. I'll give an example of something a little more grounded. What does that mean, being more optimistic, having positive emotions? So when I get a student in college and they say, Dr. John, or Doc, I'd like to do better in your class, I always ask, well, who do you hang out with? Right, Jack? I always ask. She just smiled and she's like, she remembers. I said, do you hang out with A students, or do you hang out with D and F students? Do you hang out with A students, or do you hang out with D or F students? And and if you say, well, I hang out with C, D, and F students, well, then the likelihood of you doing well in my class is not that great. Because if you are around optimistic people, if you're around bright people, you're more likely to be modeling after their behaviors of a viewpoint, of their perception, of their studying habits. So if you're a positive person, and you're not naturally a positive person, but you want to be a positive person, you need to hang out with a lot more positive individuals. And by doing that, you could have both resilience and life satisfaction over time. Okay. So how you feel at the moment is linked between happiness and a desirable life outcome. So it's not how you feel over time, a general concept, but how you feel right now. If that impacts your ability to finish a project, then you need to be happier more time, or be optimistic more often than you are sad, is what I'm trying to say. You need to be around people who are positive. If you're hanging around someone who's like Eeyore, woe is me, everything is sad and everything sucks and I hate the world, well, you're going to be a lot more like that. So it's really important you hang out with positive people and develop a sense of optimism. So happy people become more satisfied, not simply because they feel better, but their resources allow them to live better. What does that mean? Well, if you're a happy person, people want to be around you. That's the point. If you're happier, people want to be around you. If you're sad all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. You need to vent. You need to be able to tell people when you're sad and when you're upset. But you can't be doing that to everybody all the time. The critical solution is when you see yourself needing more support, you go to a psychologist, you go to a social worker, you go to a mental health expert, and you get that from someone because they're able to take that and work with it. You don't want to do that to everybody around with you, because initially they're going to love you, they're going to support you, and they're going to cook you chicken noodle soup, and they're going to bring you something to eat. But you know what? It only lasts so long. Those individuals who lost someone is a good example. If someone passes away, initially you're sad and everyone supports you. But after a few months or a year, people don't have the patience anymore. They expect you to recover. So if you get out of that process, get back into the optimistic view, happiness, you're going to end up developing more resources and thus have more support and live better. So that's how that's all connected. I hope that I explained that, as best I can. Hope I explained that clearly, I guess. Next slide. We are gonna, slide is not working. Okay, we are gonna go talk about, I talked a little bit in the resilience in general, but can you have resilience in a workplace? Absolutely. I'm a clinical psychologist, so I tend to focus on the individual, but in the workplace, resilience can be a factor. You can develop an environment that promotes growth. You can develop an environment that develops resilient people. You can develop an environment that everyone seems to foster excitement and challenges and discovery and not dread and doom. You know, how many people know someone, or maybe yourself, to say, to wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my God, I can't stand going to work today, because that environment is not really very good in being resilient for you. It's not demonstrating, it's not modeling a good concept. So, I talk about people prosper from success. Yeah, yeah. If you have someone new coming into your organization, those of you who are healthcare people, especially new individuals, allow them to find a way to be successful in little baby steps, and then make those baby steps harder and harder, and so that they continue to get better and better and be successful. So success breeds success. So you want to do that. People learn from observing. Bandura work, where I'm going to watch. And if I watch you, being successful, I may be able to be successful without you even saying a word to me, just by me observing. Now, there's some physical and genetic and intellectual limits to some of observation. I mean, I can watch someone dunk a basketball, but no matter how many years I watch someone dunk a basketball, I'm not going to be able to dunk a basketball. I mean, so there are some limits to modeling, but in general, it does work. So you want to bring people who are great leaders, positive people, who role model success, who allow other people to observe them to be successful. You allow them to be mentors, to encourage. So it really starts from the top. And that's cliche, but everything starts from the top. Okay. So it's like an umbrella, man. It's the top point, waters come stripping down on the side of the umbrella. So it's really critical who you hire that lead the organization or department, and how that person really encourages success. It allows you to help watch them work. They're supportive. They want to mentor you. Mentoring is a different level than relationships. It's a whole layer of interest. I love mentoring my students because I love seeing them grow. But that means being a mentor means it goes back to my fundamental thing I said in the beginning: relationships. To be a great mentor, you have to be a great relationship person. So, and provide basic training. What does that mean to manage personal? Man, everyone has stress. There's not one person in life that doesn't have stress. So you need to teach them. You need to teach them in a non-therapeutic way. I teach people how to cope with stress. That's my job. But if you're in a workplace, you can still help someone learn how to manage stress by being a mentor, by being a colleague. So these are great things to think about if those who are interested in the workplace organizational concept. Okay. All right. Next slide. So let's think about children. Children, we always, I'm a gerontologist. So I work with older individuals, and that doesn't get a lot of attention more than children. Our society and culture love to protect the children. We need to protect them, and we need to give them every opportunity to grow. So, what are risk factors for children who don't do well in our society, who aren't resilient? Well, males, sex-wise, they tend to do worse than females. Females are more resilient. Low intellectual abilities. There's some studies that indicate that if you're smarter, you do better. Now, I've seen other studies that says, oh, it doesn't, like, the smarter you keep going up, the better you're in society. Now, not all smart people do well, but in general, the smarter you are, you tend to do a lot better, more resilient. Um, Other difficult temperament. If you're an insecure, if you're a baby that cries a lot, who has insecurity from attachment issues. Now temperament's a little bit different than attachment in the sense that temperament is just what you're born with. So, whoever your parents, if they have anxiety in them, if they have insecurities, and so you probably have some of that when you're born. So that's what temperament means. Um, genetically, if you have the deficit, history of chronic illness. Again, if you're a child with a developmental concerns, if you're a person like me with spinal cord injury, obviously it makes it harder in life when you rely on people. Prolonged institution, history of abuse and neglect. If you've been exposed to abuse, that tends to have lifelong concerns. So, next slide. So those are risk factors, but here are some, here's our protective factors. It's not always negative, and in some ways, the protective factors are actually better predictors of how resilient you're going to be. Easy temperament. The baby that doesn't cry no matter where you take it. They sleep no matter what environment. Bright. They get along with kids. They get along with their friends. Good peer. They love to engage. They love to talk. They good academic performance. I love the students who just, I tell my students, one of the priorities in my class is just to come to class. It's not like high school where you have to go. In college, you get to choose to go. So it's just, so it's important to have good academic attendance, performance, and internal locus of control. That one of my Jules Roeder, a famous psychologist, talked about internal. It means who's in control of your life. Now, do you have control of your destiny? And you have to believe that you do. If you go in that concept and feel that you're in control of your life, then you're better off for your future. What does that mean? Well, I ask my students, are you going to be happy tomorrow? And some would say depends on what happens. Well, that's low internal control. That's saying it depends on what happens around them. If you say, yeah, I'll be happy because I dictate what I'm going to do tomorrow, then that's someone with high internal locus of control. And I think I try to be that way. I try to say, my happiness is going to hopefully be based on how I see the world and not letting someone else control me. I've already lost enough control my life physically. I don't want to give up my psychological, although it's hard sometimes. It's harder sometimes more than others, especially individuals with a lot of pain. Individuals who are isolated. Now, these are harder for individuals to feel like any sense of control. Okay. All right, next slide. I am going pretty fast with all these slides, but I'm hoping some of these things make sense. So we talked about just individual aspects. So family, what does it mean to have family resilience? Okay, well, it's some of the risk factors. If the parents don't get along, that's a risk factor. If the parents have any kind of history of being legal issues, criminality, that's an issue. Too big of a family, you don't have enough attention. So there's a sort of like a perfect number. I don't know what that is right now, but I know that having 8 kids is too much. So, but yeah, you don't want that one child either. A lot of people, just have one and they put all their eggs in one basket. So a few, it's good. But family violence. So those aren't bad things. Positive things, good mother-child relationship, good attachment to the child, to the caregiver, good father, dads are part of it as well. It's good to have a father figure in the house. Not a lot of time apart. And I think of a lot of our military people who have to go serve away actively for a year. I always feel so bad for it because that's a long time for a young kid. Um, Having close families, uh, again, those are good positive things that the family can do. Okay, sometimes you think about individual stuff, you can't influence that, but in the family system you can. Okay, good. All right, next slide. In the environment, so we talked about the individual, we talked about the family, so now we're gonna shift to the environment. So if you're poor, low SES, there's not a lot of benefits of being poor. I can't imagine what would be a benefit of being poor. And unfortunately, it creates a lot of risk factors. Um, when you have lower SES, you know, and uh, if you have a life that has many situational stressors, things that happen around you a lot, that always creates a sense of insecurity in children. So if that environment is your environment, then you got a bigger hill to climb than most others. Um, Positive factors, uh, support from adults in the community, um, support from living a little higher socioeconomic status, um, family income, again, community involvement. So do you do something in your area? Do you do something locally? Are you influenced by local things? So those are positive things that keeps you resilient. I come back to the concept. Why am I talking about this? These are factors that help with resilience and coping with all those physical things that you saw in slide 2 and 3, physical and psychological changes that are going to happen to everybody. It's going to happen more for people like us who are physically disabled. So you need to have more of these positive factors. Am I just being talking about psychobabble right now? And yeah, I am, because I am educating you to do something. And here are all the different areas you can start working on and having some sense of control in your life. So next. Uh, I talk a little bit about in my research for our talk today, and there was a concept of shame resilience theory for women, and what it boils down to this is that shame and guilt, again, cannot happen in a vacuum. It happens because our culture, our society limits or oppresses certain groups of individuals, like people with disability, like women. And when that happens, they feel trapped, powerless, and feeling of isolation. Well, and that it doesn't only happen with women, it happens with people with disabilities. We do feel trapped in situations that we have no control. We definitely feel like there's no influence. I mean, a good example is flying. I hate to fly. I would love to go to other parts of the country or the world, but because I hate flying, not because I have a fear of flying, but I have a fear of getting in and out of those dang airplanes and the way they destroy my wheelchair whenever time I go somewhere. So, and tell me, anyone here that has ever flew, have you ever had a wheelchair broken down from being in a wheelchair? Because I have every time I fly. So, so yeah, Uh, but the way to get out of this shame is what they say call shame resilience theory, which is you increase connection with people, again, relationships. You improve your power, meaning your control, and you give yourself freedom. Freedom, you allow yourself more freedom to complete the task you need to do the responsible you want to do, and you connect with others. So, and that's really what this concept of shame resilience for women in our culture who tend to be oppressed in a lot of different ways. Okay, next slide. Oh, I was in a podcast, was it last year with a doctor in California? I remember, um, I apologize, I'm missing out on my name right now. Um, and she mentioned once in one of the podcasts, the doctor, and she stated about positive traumatic growth. And at that time, I didn't understand what that mean. I mean, I understood what it means to have some resilience from the trauma, but but someone really put it together very well, what they call positive traumatic growth, which is by having this traumatic event, you end up becoming better with people. Some, some people take the experience, you become more appreciative of what you have, your life. Um, Internally, you become more stronger and you have a greater spiritual development. At least that's what this positive traumatic growth. So trauma is not always all bad. At the time it is, but next slide. So in addition to that, it says that, you know, after you had the trauma, you you're kinder, you're more loving, you may be more brave. So there's a lot of different changes that happens in trauma. There's a lot of negative parts to it too. Don't get me wrong. But you know, there is also some potential positive changes in your experience. And that's what traumatic growth is, post-traumatic growth is. So how do you take this trauma that just happened to you and flip it around? And that's the key. You just change it instead of looking at the negative, change the, see the things that are positive. So we have about 10 minutes, and I want to make sure I go over some of the questions that was sent to me. And I'm going to go down through some of these. Now, some of you, if you have any, feel free to ask me in a question and answer. But so how, so question was, one question from a listener was, how to help with anxiety and depression in quadriplegics. So first thing I would say is, look, being a quadriplegic is incredibly difficult. When they rank what disabilities are most difficult to manage, being a quad was up there in ranking. Now, facial disfigurement was actually one of the leading difficulty. That I think that has a social implication to that. But so how do you help with anxiety and depression? And part of it is making sure they have good support system. Again, relationship. Part is making sure that they seek help from people who understand about rehab and spinal cord injury. You just don't want to go to any psychologist or social worker. You really need to go to someone that understands the field of spinal cord injury. I think that's key. So go to a specific profession. And you're saying, well, where do I find those? Well, my suggestion is local rehabs and the American Board of Professional Psychologists. And they have a list of rehab psychologists and based on their location. So the American Board of Professional Psychologists, go to their website and type in your zip code, and they should be able to give you a list of people who are specifically rehab psychologists. So, um, so question number 2. I'm a C5-6 incomplete Asia D with good, fairly decent mobility. I get jealous with the quads that are incomplete because they move so well. My limitations are caused by primarily pain. What mental techniques used to overcome overwhelming feeling that I'm operating underwater against strong current? That's a great question. So again, the question is, I'm an incomplete. I move pretty well, but I got a lot of pain. And you know what? I have to say, in my 30 some years of working in rehab, one of the most difficult things to adjust to is pain, chronic severe pain. So I'm going to recommend 2 things really. One is make sure you have a good pain doctor who is not too crazy and in the medication, but enough to manage some of it and knowing how to manage spinal cord injury and the pain. So right professional, that's one. 2, the techniques that we tend to use for a good pain management, I would say is 2 processes. One is distraction techniques, and the other one is meditation. What are those? What does that mean? Well, distracting technique is like, have you ever watched a real good movie and you're focused and you're intently watching, or you're reading a good book, and all of a sudden an hour goes by and you don't realize the time just went by? Well, you don't. Not only did you not realize the time just went by, you didn't realize you had pain anymore because you were so focused on the distraction. So whatever that distraction, that's really unique to you. So I can't say do this, do that. But if you love movies, if you love to read, if you love watching sports, something that distracts you. And third is, yeah, you need to learn how to meditate. The better you at meditating. Now, I'm not telling you to do yoga, but if you could do yoga, go for it. But the bigger part is meditation. So 3, right professionals, right distraction technique, and right meditation. Those are 3 things I would, when I say professional, I'm saying maybe doctors who can prescribe the right meds. Okay. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Okay, let's see. Number 3, question number 3. I suffered my injury in December 2019 and came out of the hospital rehab in May 2021. So 2 years. Wow. Since then, it's constant journey readjusting normal life, getting back to work. Not sure how to balance many down days with the rest of my life. It's a great question. You're a newbie, 2019. You're very young. But just I still I'm trying to go back to my old days when I just got hurt. And I remember meeting. So I was like a few months injury, and then I met someone that was 4 years post injury, and I thought, wow, 4 years, that's such a long time. You've been disabled for 4 years, and now I'm 37 years post injury, so I can, it's everything's relative. I'm going to say to you, for individual who submitted this question, is that it's really critical that you try to get back to your normal life, which means whatever that was before. Possibly you were in school, possibly you were going to work. By getting those sense of normalcy is really important. Number 2, how much of your physical requirements, make sure you have enough support, because if you don't have that, it's sort of like Maslow's hierarchy. If you don't have your basic needs met, you can't really have other things like work and safety and relationships. So you need to really make sure you have your caregiving done. So that those are critical things I would suggest to get back readjusting. And if you have more down days than good, then you need to again seek a professional like myself, that can help you work through that. Be around people who are hopefully role modeling positive things. Okay. See, question number 4. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to send me any. I'm just going to go down this list. How do you find a mental health provider in a unique struggling living with SCI? And my suggestion is the American Board of Professional Psychologists. I believe they're based in South Carolina now, but that's not important. The more important thing is that you need to go on their website, click on rehab psychologist, and then click on and type in your local zip code. And that will give you your who the psychologists who are board certified in rehab psychology. Let's see. Aging is tough. When and how to stop moving and walking. See, it's a catch-22. As you get older, you're going to have more pain and you're going to move less. And moving a lot of time is painful. But if you don't move, that's even worse. So you have really a choice. Either you exercise with the pain so that you have less pain, or you sit and don't do anything and have more pain. So I'd rather exercise anyway, but so try to keep moving. You got to keep moving. That is critical. Let's see. What can I do to lose weight? Leading cause of death for people who have spinal cord injury, and why? Well, it's really important. Again, I don't like to reinvent the wheel. So talk to a dietitian and nutritionist. I sit here with a Buddha-esque type belly. If I'm trying to explain that correctly, you can't see it, but I'm always about 6 months pregnant. Jackie's here laughing at me, but so it's true. So, and I try to keep people from rubbing my belly because I don't want that to get into that Buddha concept there. But the point is, though, there are certain things we can't do because just the fact that you don't have any muscle structure or rigidity anymore. But you should only intake enough that you need to survive. And I remember going to my physiatrist, and she recommended I had no more than approximately 1,500 calorie intake. Now, this is different for different people, a different function, but for me, she said about 1,500 calories a day. And yeah, 1,500 calories in a day is like that's like a freaking blooming onion. That's it. Like 3 sodas is like sodas of 300 calories. A hamburger is like 600. So we're looking at like two burgers and a soda. That's not a lot for what we usually think of meals, right? But if that's what you need to only limit how much you intake, and again, I'm a psychologist, so I'm not a nutritionist, so I would suggest talking to a nutritional expert. But for my personal experience, I really had to limit my intake. I love going to buffets. That's not a good place to go for if you want to stay with that. Okay, support groups. I think the foundation has support groups, but okay. Oh, there's a question on here. It says, I have a cold spina bifida and didn't know if I had it until 49. I'm 68-year-old, 8 now. God is with me because I'm not in a wheelchair. Thank God for you, Diana. But I have everything that goes with it. Pain, losing control. Yes, one of the hardest things, as I said a few slides ago, pain. Questions on individuals like me because I'm trying to find support groups. Yeah, support groups really important. I don't have, and again, we have to see if the information specialists have any specific support groups. But with the advent of the internet and Zoom, you pretty much can find a support group anywhere in the country. and that you may be able to link into. And they will be critical for you, Diana, in giving you resources specific to your disability. And I think that would be your best step, first step. Find someone, find an organization, connect with your peers, and that is critical. Anonymous attendant, I'm happy to see you back in 24. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be back. So, I didn't get to cover all the questions. I'm sorry. There are so many more. I do thank you for, you can always reach me at, if you need to email me at my university, but again, if it's really important that, pertinent question that you feel that I can really answer to you. But thank you again for today and spending the hour with me. I will, rehash 30 seconds. Listen, life is hard for us. I've struggled many times, and the last 8 months I've been struggling with medical issues. It's hard. It's hard, and as I've gotten older, my body is just not able to, I don't know how to say it. I struggle, and I try to live well. I try to do all the right things, but and sometimes other things have influences on your life as well, and you try to battle them physically and mentally. Ultimately, I have to make sure mentally I'm stronger. I need to connect with the people around me, the relationships, and make sure that is in line. I need to stay positive. Can't be an Eeyore around people. No one wants to be around you. So you have to sometimes fake it, to make sure that people want to be around you. You need to surround yourself with other positive people. And because being around people who are good, compassionate people is really critical in your survival, and my survival, I believe. So, and find meaning in things that are interesting to you. This podcast is meaningful to me. I really truly believe that I can affect other people's lives in different ways by going through this podcast. Thank you again. I will see you in April in our next podcast. So April and June. And so I'm not having one next month or so, but in April, we're going to have another one, hopefully. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.